Hello and welcome to the Pop Off PC Mag's show where we talk about video games, the video game industry, trends, news, our thoughts, what's going on, all that stuff. I'm Jordan Miner. I'm joined by Jeffrey L. Wilson, managing editor of the Games and Apps team,
It's the apps and games team.
Apps and Games team. Cool. My boss. So that's cool.
But I like to think of us as co-workers.
Same. So not that long ago, on some shady corners of the internet, some people hacked Nintendo's servers, or just where they had a lot of just old material going back decades, ROMs and
Mhm.
plans for games and sort of stuff they had canceled, and just all this wealth of Nintendo secrets that people are still pouring over, gigs and gigs of it.
Right.
Um, and it's kind of kicked off a dilemma because on one hand, this is all very historically valuable material, but on the other hand, it was very obviously stolen.
Right.
So
Wait, is,
obviously,
is, is there an ethical dilemma about hacking Nintendo servers out there right now?
well, I mean, I think that we cannot advocate for stealing, but this news has gotten out there. Like we can't not also engage with what's out there.
That's very
So,
true.
so it's a tricky, very kind of modern, a very video game specific sort of problem, or sort of not even pickle dilemma.
Yeah, it is very video game centric because I haven't seen too many people hack 20th Century Fox and for deleted scenes from an old movie or anything.
Related League Wolverine, X-Men Origins
Oh,
Wolverine.
did he really?
Yeah,
Oh, that's unfortunate.
yeah.
So what exactly did they find on these servers?
Lots of stuff. I'm looking at the story now on our sister site, IGN.com. A lot of it is like kind of funny, sort of. Remember when Mario 64 came out? There was this big rumor that you can unlock Luigi in it. Because I was like, why not? He's always there. There was this
Right.
weird texture that people thought said L is real. Um, that never ended up accounting to anything, at least in that
maybe
word.
that's a Death Note reference.
I'm not sure of the timing lines. I don't know when Death Note came out. Um, but so you can never unlock Luigi in that game. But people have found by hacking these ROMs that they made models for him. That it was potentially a plan at some point. And by hacking that ROM, they've made some very crispy looking PC ports of that game.
Interesting, interesting. So people were able to, I assume, play Mario 64 with Luigi now. Is that what one of the things are?
Yeah, if
Or?
they're willing to break the law, they can do it. You can do whatever you want.
Interesting, interesting. It is kind of dicey because I mean, if you're a dedicated gamer of any type, you probably dabbled into some ROMs at some point. Um, and as someone, and the same as you, as someone who's a creator, you also understand that you're kind of dumping my private stuff out onto the public could be an issue. So it is kind of shaky grounds here.
Yeah, I mean it's like torrenting. Like the act of torrenting itself is, technically fine. It's just what are you torrenting?
Right.
Or,
If
yeah.
you're using your torrents to share your independent home movie, perfect.
Mhm.
But if you're using it to share, unreleased Nintendo games,
Do we still have most pirated movies? Is that
yeah,
still on Meg?
it's still alive. It's
Cool.
still
So read
alive.
that on
Okay.
PC Mag.
That's right.
Um, but in addition to these ROM hacks, also just like, I think it was Star Fox. People have found like just like the notes developers have written, like, yeah, just all this like development history stuff.
Mhm.
That's really fascinating. And video games are such a needlessly secretive industry. I think it kind of creates the demand for this stuff.
That's very true. Like you read a movie, you know who the director or screenwriters are. You read a book, of course, you have an author. But a lot of times with video games, so much of this stuff is just mystery to a lot of people. You really
Mhm.
have to do some digging. And like you said, I think that fuels some of the curiosity about some of the things locked away in the corners of developer studios.
Yeah, and Nintendo I think is like ripe for that because they're so, they've been around for so long, they're so beloved, and they're also like so secretive.
Hmm.
Um, it's like playing a heist of the Disney Vault, like
Right.
gotta be
It's
good. Yeah.
it's interesting because a lot of people may not realize just how much material may be cut from games due to time constraints, due to budget constraints. So what they found is probably pretty much standard fare for many developers.
Totally, yeah. Like even when you just data mine a game that gets released, like normally you'll find a ton of stuff. So being able to now get into stuff that wasn't even released, um, You're gonna find like someone found a sprite of Toad smoking a cigarette, or like
Yeah,
like an old version of Mario World.
there's like a sprite of like Luigi flipping the bird or
Yeah,
something
why
like
not?
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially if you're like a developer, you're like, no one's gonna see this, so you like hide little jokes for yourself. Like,
right. It's like the Disney animators from back in the day.
yeah. Don't take a close look at some of these constellations, some of these Little Mermaid towers.
It's oh yeah, it's interesting because so much of this stuff is locked away from us, and even for some developers, they have some of this stuff and aren't allowed to speak about it. Like for example, I recently downloaded the Samurai Showdown Neo Geo collection from the Epic Game Store. It was free on the first day, and what was really cool is that they have like about 2 or 3 hours of developer interviews. And one of the great things about that package, they actually have a unreleased Neo Geo game, a game called Samurai Showdown 5 Perfect. It had exactly one location test here in America, and SNK was having deep financial problems, and it got yanked. And apparently, a developer had it all this time for like I don't know, a good 15 years probably. And when he was approached by, I believe, Digital Eclipse, who did the publishing for this, even he was a bit hesitant about releasing this, doing to like, he worked for SNK,
Mhm.
and that probably could be a legal issue. But thankfully, all that got worked out, and they're able to like, give this part of gaming history to the public.
So that in that case, it's cool that it worked out, but that can be the exception most of the time. Some now these companies, a big problem with video games is that they just don't care, except for when they're trying to like sell you a re-release. They don't really take a lot of, they don't care about preserving their own history, and I think it's a real problem. So that kind of gets back into the ethics argument of it too. It's like there's a difference between stealing directly from an artist, but
Mm-hmm.
then people can kind of justify to themselves. We're like, I'm not really the artist got what they're going to get. I'm more stealing from this company that is not is otherwise just going to hoard this
Mm-hmm.
and never put it out.
Yeah, there. I have a favorite game. One of my favorite games is Outrun Coast to Coast. I had it on the Xbox 360 years and years ago, and I don't have an Xbox anymore. I don't have the game anymore, of course. But you can't legally buy this game anywhere, and I have the ROM of it. I will admit that. And as soon as Sega puts out an official version of it, I'll buy it again. I love that game. But sometimes, when the official outlets, put that locked door in front of you, the underground gets to work.
They also get to work like making them like playable on modern computers and stuff, because that's another thing. That's another video game specific problem of like just having the means to even run this stuff. Like a movie, it's a movie. We can watch movies from like 100 years ago, and we can do it. Whereas games made for very specific, weird old hardware, it's a lot
Hmm.
trickier, and a lot of companies just won't bother.
Yeah, and I think maybe that'll change because Xbox has done, Microsoft and the Xbox game studios have done a really good job of like making sure they're backwards compatible pretty deeply, like to the original Xbox. Like if you have a current Xbox One, your game catalog goes way back. And I think didn't they also re-release like the old Duke controller so you can play those
I
old
think they did.
games?
Yeah, I think so.
It's they're definitely trying to do that. And of course, like but game stores like Good Old Games, they
Mhm.
specialize in like
Yeah.
making those old games playable again.
Yeah, doing the work there. Yeah, but like it's also a shame too that those stores have to make it like a selling point, right? Like I feel like Microsoft really they really start getting into that when they're like, well, we're losing really bad to Sony. We gotta do something. We can at least get a lot of goodwill with this backwards compatibility stuff. But like
Right.
Sony, when they're winning, they're like PS4 games. Isn't it still kind of iffy whether or not PS4 games even work on PS5?
The last thing I read is that some will be backwards compatible.
Yeah, so it's still not even like a done deal, right? And
Right.
like when they were, the PS3 was originally compatible with PS2, but then when they cut the price, they like stripped out stuff. I remember even when I got the DS, I was
Mhm.
really upset that it could play Game Boy Advance games, but not Game Boy Color games,
Hmm.
which is what kind of got me looking into some of this stuff. I won't say how far down I went into it, but
For
You
research
know,
purposes, of
that
course.
that's how people get radicalized, right? Like there aren't official, venues of getting it. Or even just like with the Nintendo, virtual console stuff. The Wii and the Wii U, they had these drip feeds of old
Hmm.
games, and then it was you had to like pay to move them over, and now with the Switch, it's a whole new system where online subscribers get this sort of like Netflix category, but again, it's very slow and it's limited selection. And it's like just give people
Just
games.
give us the games. And I
Yeah.
understand that some games may be in dicey territory. Like, for example, uh, Outrun Coast to Coast has official car licenses. So that may be a problem if you want the accurate version of that game. But for me, who just love the gameplay and power sliding and the beautiful sights and sounds, just strip out the licenses, give me a generic knockoff Ferrari, and I'm good.
Yeah, who cares? Then you can maybe crash into it. Like, you can damage it more if you have to worry about
No,
that
that's
license.
all you want. You just want some bashed up cars, don't
I
you?
do. I was playing a lot of Burnout this weekend. Um, what was I gonna say next? Yeah, and also physical media too. I feel like this is what also why people want to make sure they can still get physical versions of games because
Hmm.
they have it. Whereas when you get these digital downloads, you're like ostensibly, and this applies to movies too. It's like you're kind of really just renting it.
You're renting. Netflix is a modern day blockbuster. Let's be real, and that's one of the reasons why I don't have Netflix anymore because I came to realize that Netflix has at least when I was using it, had a very bad recency problem where if you try to find something from like 50s, 40s, or even the 60s, it's not much there for that. You have to go out and maybe go to Amazon, I guess. But I also like the idea of just owning these movies now, my favorite movies. Like for some schlock, I'll watch it online. But my
Hmm.
absolute favorites, I actually purchase. I get tired of hunting for them. Did this get delisted here but relisted there? That's just too much. I shouldn't know this much about the business in order to watch a movie.
Now we have to pay attention to what executives are fighting, so we know what comic book characters are going to show up in which movies now. So
Mm.
we all need to pay attention to that stuff.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
but you see, like people get really excited when like limited run games puts out, cartridges and for like indie games and discs. And granted, their business model only works because they're only putting out a limited number of those games. But the people that want them get them.
Yeah, and they also put out some older games too. I think is it Limited Run that's putting out the Blade Runner point and click adventure,
That
I
sounds
believe.
right. Yeah, because then they partner with GOG to like kind of get that together.
I think so. I think
Okay.
so. And the fact that they actually got that game with the license is
Mhm.
kind of miraculous, considering that no one really saw the recent Blade Runner unless it came a cult hit at home or something. I don't know.
I mean, also they put out cartridges for like Shadows of the Empire and those like old Star Wars games.
Right, right. So
Um,
they're doing a good job at games preservation. And you have organizations like the Video Game History Foundation with Frank Cifaldi, and he's chronicling everything that he can find with old magazines, prototypes, unreleased things. There are people out there who are putting that work in when the publishers don't.
yeah, and again, you can argue that these people that are these pirates are also putting in some of that work.
That's very
Um,
true. That's
so
very true. I am not so quick to dismiss them when they're able to provide something that uh, the main outlet does not provide.
much like other things that are technically crime, sometimes you got to look at the systemic issues that create them rather than blaming individuals.
Interesting.
Which is something.
That does apply to life sometimes, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't
Hmm.
know if you've also experienced that.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm from the South. I know. But yeah, it's in a way I'm glad that this Nintendo leak got out because I think people need to realize just how much stuff it takes to make a video game. Like between that and this is a little bit different, but Kickstarter.
mhm.
You know, you invest some money in a game today, Kickstarter. 2 or 3 years later, it may come out. These things don't pop out of the blue. There's tons of work that goes in, and I'm glad there are people out there trying to preserve this stuff.
Yeah, yeah. The industry in general needs a lot more transparency from just working conditions and yeah, how games get made and all that stuff. So it's going to happen one way or another.
One way or another.
Yeah. So keep hold on to the games you've got. Um, you know, don't break the law, but
Don't break the law, but
that
sometimes you
that's all we
gotta
can say
right click,
there.
Got to right-click save as sometimes. So that's all I'm personally going to say.
Yeah. So thanks for talking to me, Jeff. Thanks for being our resident old video game man.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time.